This Saturday, Alabama travels up to the city to play St. John's and MSG. Both of these programs are coming off of massive first wins in their bye games. Just beautiful display of offense from both of these teams, which, is to be expected from Alabama. Not as much from St. John's. St. John's had a ton of questions coming into this season about their guard play, who was going to play point for them. Yet their first game against Quinnipiac, a good MAC program, a team that has had success in recent years, they drop 100 plus points, make it look super easy in the process. Still have some questions with what is this going to look like against better competition, but the same could be said for Alabama. I love the ceiling for both of these teams. I'm curious to see what sort of display we get from them this early in the season. Subi, what are you most looking forward to out of this game?
It bears repeating again, Riley, just the insane work Rick Pitino did in the transfer portal. Like you look at this roster and it's just so revamped from a team that was seating wise an elite team last year, right? Dylan Mitchell had an awesome start against Quinnipiac. And by the way, St. John's will punch you in the mouth within the first 5, 6 minutes, and you're like real woozy at the under, I don't know, 12 timeout. And that's what happened with Quinnipiac. I think it was like 19-4 or something like that. Dylan Mitchell hadn't missed from the field the first 5 or 6 shots that he took. Then you got Ian Jackson, your boy, coming in, and then Sanon coming over as well. And then Bryce Hopkins, right, within the Big East. And so, like, Ian Jackson might have some question marks. Hopkins might have some question marks as well. But Sanon, I never really had any question marks. The only question mark was that he was being coached by Hurley,
Mhm.
and not Danny, but he was being coached by Bobby
The
Hurley.
bad Hurley, yeah.
Yeah, which can really impede a human. And then Dylan Mitchell, right? He's a seasoned vet. So it bears repeating once again, just the insane work that Patino did in the portal. But for this game, what I'm looking at, Riley, is the Tide have to hit from three. What I
Mhm.
noticed is that, yes, it was a really beautiful offensive game in terms of point production, and they dominated North Dakota. Let's not make any bones about that. But they only shot about 30% from three.
Mhm.
So that tells you they did a lot of their work inside the arc, right? I don't think you're going to have that same success against the Johnny's front line. Remember just the names that I had mentioned. And it's kind of crazy that I'm saying this about a Bama team that we're so used to not only jacking up threes but drilling them. I mean,
Mhm.
what one of the last times we saw them out against BYU, they hit some preposterous number of threes in that
I believe it
NCAA
was
tournament
17,
game.
if I'm not mistaken. Was it even more than that? It might have
It
been.
might have been 18.
I might be shorting them. Whatever it was, we saw them hit a lot of threes.
I mean, Mark Sears was in fuego, absolutely, but they didn't start off the season shooting the three well, and I think that's going to have to happen against St. John's because St. John's one of the best front courts I think in the entire country. And by the way, I was just highlighting the transfers. Zubi Ejiofor, right, guy who was there last year as well. So technically a transfer, but you get what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Um, so I think the Tide's going to have to get a little bit better from three in this particular game. And then they got to get back on defense from an Alabama perspective. Transition defense is going to be absolutely crucial. The Johnnies are going to look to play at a breakneck pace. Not only is that going to be their MO, I mean, you mentioned we're not necessarily used to it. This season, I think you should get used to it. I think they want to play fast. They're going to be at home in MSG on a Saturday, FS1, right? You look at their previous game against Quinnipiac, about 41%, Riley, of their points came in transition, came off the fast break. So Bama, you miss a shot, you can absolutely see just based on the very small sample size of game one, a missed three from Bama and a long rebound, quick outlet. That's 2 points and a layup for the Red Storm. Nate Oates calls a timeout, right? That's just something I can see happening. So I think shooting the three well for Bama and getting back on defense, those are going to have to be the two biggest priorities in my eyes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And if I could even speak to what you're saying about the threes, because I would say I'm higher than consensus on this Bama front court. I think Taylor Bull Bowen has some like legit skill as a I should say this, a potential to be an elite play finisher, whether that's on the lob or on the catch. He can roll to the hoop, finish above the rim. He can also step out and hit threes. I think he had a pretty quiet debut, 0 for 2 from beyond the arc, just 8 points. But I've seen a decent amount of him at Florida State over the years, just being an ACC guy, to know the talent is there, the physical tools are there as well. Aiden Sherrill, another guy who, high pedigree recruit, top 25 kid in his class, and had some moments last year. So, but at this point, I would still say that front line is more potential than reliable production, and that can't be said for St. John's. I feel like Zuby Ejiofor somehow is still being slept on, even though he averaged nearly a double-double last year. And I think when you see whether it's the highlight reel dunks or blocks, you sort of assume he doesn't have any skill. But you go back and watch that Quinnipiac game, he's attacking dudes off the bounce. He had 3 assists. I looked this up, Zuby. He had 4 more assists in 3 games last season, career high of 6, to where, he at least, you're not really going to look at him and be like, oh, a true point center who you're running the offense through necessarily, but he can make reads and is a smart passer. And even just looking like for all the question marks on the St. John's offense, for all the question marks about the point guard play, it did seem like the way they shared the ball was contagious against Quinnipiac. 25 assists on 39 made field goals, and they truly got good performances out of everyone who touched the court. Even Ruben Prey, who was really nondescript last year, had a little moment where he had a nice finish around the basket. You mentioned Dylan Mitchell. I thought he was all over that game. Felt very Aaron Scott-ish, but just bigger and more athletic. Remember how Aaron Scott would guard like every position on the perimeter and was like, dude, this guy's like 6'3", 6'4", maybe he's 6'5". I don't know. I'm exaggerating, but hopefully St. John's, it's a good thing, St. John's fans. But it felt like he could guard whatever position he wanted to and just had such a knack for coming up with steals and would be like, if you're making a pass in transition, well, he's going to meet the guy who you're giving it to on the wing and forcing him into the sideline and getting a bad decision out of him a lot of times. Like Dylan Mitchell can do that same, I guess, like imposing of his will defensively, and always been a big steal guy and defensive guy throughout his career, but this just seems like a perfect marriage between player and system to get the best version out of him. So, yeah, I think Bama's going to have their hands full with that front court. But if I could give you one guy, I'm surprised we haven't mentioned him yet, who could swing this game, it's the best guard in this matchup, who's LeBaron Philon.
Yeah, he's incredible, man. I know he's your guy. He's our guy. He's really blossomed and come into his own in this system, in the NATO system, and he's been patient about it as well. But he can swing this game. He's made for these moments as well, and he's a guy that has been through the highs, right? The highs of what Alabama basketball is like, and he's going to need to be great, right? Because I don't want to hyper fixate on the front court, but I think you unpacked it really well, and you sort of echoed what I'm feeling, which is there's more potential for this front court than there is current production. And when you're talking about a preview for the second game of the season, that's not really going to help you win these ball games. But LeBaron Philon is just so electric, and I mean he might have to backpack in this game truly. And if he's going to be the one to facilitate, if he's going to be the one to have to score points, um, he can. I can think he can carry the tide for a good stretch of the game. But the Johnnies just have a lot of weapons, man. Like they have so many weapons. And again, they're playing at home. This is going to be a crazy atmosphere. I can already tell. Um, you know, so LeBaron Philon, I'll let you speak your piece on him, but I expect him to actually have a really good game. I just don't know if it's going to be enough. Not to say that he can't single-handedly win Alabama some games. I don't know if he's necessarily going to have to in this season, but for this particular matchup, he's going to need help for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. He might put the backpack on and get you 20, 25 points. I think as good as this Johnny's defense is, and as much as they're going to pressure and make life hard on everybody, LeBaron's first step is elite. His quickness once he gets in the lane, to where I think he's going to have counters to go to when you try to take him out of rhythm, to where I still think he can get his even against a really good defense. Very interested to see. You mentioned that help. Like, will he get Aiden Holloway back? Will he get Latrell Wrightsell back? Because neither of them played in game one. I think, I
Dude,
mean,
I'm not trying to say anything rude or mean about Latrell Wrightsell here. It just seems like it's been a very uneven uh, tenure at Alabama with the injuries, and I feel for him. Is what I'm
yeah,
saying. Like I
yeah,
feel terrible for him. I'd love for him to be 100% healthy because where was he before? Long Beach State? Not Long Beach State. Cal State Fullerton.
Yes, it was a big West school. I knew that. Yeah,
I believe, yeah, I believe it was Fullerton. And actually, I remember having an assistant coach on Anthony Santos when he was at Fullerton, and he couldn't say enough great things about Latrell Reitzel. But in terms of the availability, I really wish he was able to be there 100% of the time. And I'm sure Tide fans are because I know when Nate Oates brought him in, the goal was like he would have been so complimentary if he was 100% healthy the last couple of years.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he's been awesome when he's healthy, and even to that
Yeah.
point about like LeBaron is so good at collapsing a defense and finding the open man, whether it's for a lob or it's an open guy on the perimeter. And Aiden Holloway is one of the best catch and shoot players in the country last year. Latrell Wrightsell has shown flashes of that as well, where he's been awesome in that skill set. And I think Wrightsell's an underrated defender as well that could definitely help going against this deep cater of St. John's guards, if you will. The most recent update from Nate Oates, I believe, either came today at the time of recording this on Wednesday, where he said both of those guys are day to day. He said with Reitzel, it's not even his Achilles. This direct quote was his Achilles is fine. He hurt his finger in the exhibition against Furman. Holloway, I can't remember his injury off the top of my head, but he's also listed as day to day. Let me see. Oh, it's a wrist injury for Holloway. Sorry for the pause there, but yeah. So getting both of those guys back, or even just one, would be massive. Amari Allen acquitted himself quite well against North Dakota, and he's a big time riser throughout the offseason per Alabama fans, and the coaching staff was very, very high on him. 6'8" wing who can do a little bit of everything, true dribble pass shoot player, and I think he finished with 12 points, 5 assists in his first game. So it's nice to at least have him available and to show that, at least after one game, albeit against lower level competition, that he showed that the hype wasn't unwarranted. I mean, Houston Millette came up big with 15 points, 8 boards as well in the first contest. So it's nice to have like those guys as backup options. But Millette still just hasn't played a ton of minutes against high major opponents. And then Amari Allen is a freshman and a good recruit, top 75 kid, but not like an elite prospect, was more of an under the radar guy who impressed coaches and sort of outperformed expectations early on. So yeah, just getting one of those guards back would be massive for this game.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about the experience factor either. Like St. John's has dudes that have been around the block. We mentioned Mitchell, even Sanon. He was there. He was playing high level hoop last year. Ian Jackson, Bryce Hopkins, like Bryce Hopkins has been around the block too. Just the experience level of it all, and then of course Rick Pitino. Like there's no point in not highlighting that as well. Obviously, Nate Oates has an incredible coaching track record thus far, but Rick Pitino is arguably one of the goats. He's a Mount Rushmore coach straight up.
Right.
So I think that's going to be a fun. That's going to be a great coaching matchup for sure. I will say just real quick, Riley, you mentioned how some people are overlooking Zuby Ejiofor. And honestly, I was guilty of that in this preview, right? Like I started with Dylan Mitchell and I started with all the transfers. And then we got to Zuby. But I think what's contributing to that, and it's at no fault of Zuby's, and I think he is getting overlooked unfairly. But you look at some of the best bigs in the country, right? JT Toppin, he's getting a lot of buzz for National Player of the Year, Big 12 Player of the Year for sure. Right. There's JT Toppin. You keep going up, Cam Boozers, and then the freshman crop, right? So just like all the freshmen. Then maybe we start to talk about Zuby, but also, I don't know. I talked about Flory Badunga as well. Trey Kaufman Wren is another big that we talk about for a national title team. Like there's a really good, even if you exclude the freshmen, the front court players in college basketball, those that are seasoned, are either getting talked about like conference player of the year
Mhm.
or contributing to a potential national title contender, things of that nature. And it's funny because like Zuby Ejiofor absolutely could be Big East player of the year,
Right.
and St. John's absolutely is a national title contender. So why are we not talking about him some more? Maybe that's something we do our best to change this upcoming season. But he can help his case too by having a strong performance against Bama.
Thank you, Subi. That sets me up nicely to transition us into some predictions. I think St. John's wins this one, and it's not even an indictment on Bama. I was a little lower on St. John's going into the year just because of the question marks at the point of attack on both ends of the court. Of course, defensively, you trust Patino to scheme that. But offensively, I thought, I mean, Dylan Darling had some nice moments in that first game too. Again, consider the opponent. It is a MAC school with Quinnipiac, a good one, but still a MAC school to where this might be an overreaction, but just the ease at which they manufactured buckets, like that portends favorably for me. And I think you have you're on your essentially your home court. You'll have the massive advantage there. And with those questions of that Alabama front line, even though I like them, they're just not seasoned yet. I could see Zuby having like a 20 and 15 game, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, he belongs in that conversation with like the of all the other top front court players in the country that we're talking about. And then when you factor in just the uncertainty about Holloway and Reitzel, I think Reitzel, especially defensively, is just going to be needed here to help contain dribble penetration, to help close out on shooters and everything. And I like Amari Allen's potential. I'm a little bit fearful of him, I guess, playing as well as he did against North Dakota in his first game against high major competition. I think the Johnnies win a close one that ends up being a lot of possessions. I think both of their first games were over 70 possessions, Alabama and St. John's repeatedly. St. John's almost hit 80 possessions. Love seeing an up-tempo game, but I could see it end up being like, I'll say 85 to 78 for the Johnnies.
Okay. I think Riley, like this is probably the first preview of the season where I think we're on somewhat opposite sides of the fence here, right? So, I mean, I agree with your preview, but just your general outlook with Bama and St. John's. I'm super high on St. John's. I think they can make some real noise in this Big East conference and challenge UConn. Whereas Bama, I think this is going to be a year for Nate Oates where it's a bit of a quote unquote regroup here. They're still top 15. They're going to make the NCAA tournament, but are they potent? Are they going to go to a Final Four like they did a couple years ago? Are they going to make a deep run like they did even last year? Right. I don't know if that's necessarily in the cards this year. And you can't, it's tough to consistently go deep in the NCAA tournament, right? Like UConn went to or won two titles and then they lost, I believe, in the first round or second round, excuse me, right? Because they were an 8 seed. But regardless, it's tough to consistently go deep and go deep. And Nate Oates, all he's known and done is go deep in this tournament, in the tournament. So I think this is going to be a little bit of a step back this year for St. John, or excuse me, for Bama. And by the way, this kicks off a brutal next few games for Bama. After this, they got Purdue, they got Illinois, and then they got Gonzaga. So they could very well split that. I think that would be super for them. But as it relates to this game and the front court, I think Aiden Sherrell's the only one right now that if the game were to tip off, and it's going to tip off on Saturday, I'm fairly confident he can hold his own against the Johnny's guys. The others, no. I mentioned Bama's going to need to hit the 3-point shot. I trust LeBaron Phylon and everything that he's going to be able to do. But if there's no Holloway, and even if there is a Holloway, who knows how good that shot's going to be. The home court advantage is going to be huge. MSG rocking. It's a Saturday, FS1. Rick Pitino might even come out in the white suit. I bet you stars will be out. Like I bet Spike Lee is going to be there. The Knicks play the lowly Nets the next day. Like it's going to be a good weekend of basketball in the Mecca. So I got the Johnnies winning 92 to 83. The only question is, does Noah Clowney, former Alabama big man, they could use him actually.
Yeah,
Noah
right.
Clowney, who's currently on the Nets, does he show up for this Saturday game? Johnnies win 92 to 83.
If Patino shows up in the white suit, if Jalen Brunson pulls up alongside like Jay-Z, Beyonce, whichever other celebrities you want to throw out there, I like the Johnnies winning by like 25. Let them be known that I reserve the right to. Also, I don't know why my mind went from Jalen Brunson to Jay-Z. It feels like sort of different planes of celebrity status, but this is what you get sometimes when you record late into the nights. But we will be back breaking down this game along with all the other big ones this weekend. Make sure you stay tuned to the channel.